Hi, I'm Hensi and I'm here with Madiha. Madiha, you have a very interesting story, so tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, sure. I've had sort of a multifaceted career, I guess you could call it. Started off in management consulting out of university, which many of us who don't know what we want to do with our lives first start out doing. But then quickly made my way into financial services, which I really enjoyed. Worked in corporate strategy for a couple of larger banks, so the likes of Lehman Brothers, JP Morgan. They were in multiple different financial services businesses, so really got to understand that space. And then did a couple of things that, I won't get into the details, but eventually landed in the UAE, where I've been working in tech for the last 8 years, and including fintech. And I've really enjoyed sort of building and launching new tech businesses.
So you did the switch from traditional finance to tech. So how was that? Can you describe a little bit of how you found that transition? And how you experienced
I wouldn't say it was an easy transition, but I would say it wasn't difficult either. It just was different. And I think you learn very different things in both those spaces, which is what's so exciting. When you're sort of working at established brands, like a McKinsey for consulting, you get your pick of clients, you get to work with really amazing companies around the world. And when you're working sort of in an institutional financial services provider like a JP Morgan, the scale is so massive that anything you build or anything you work on is immediately impacting sort of millions of people and sort of billions of dollars worth of transactions, right? So the scale impact is incredible. And sort of that's the sort of benefit of working in those sort of institutional environments. But then tech teaches you how to iterate and how to move at speed. And that whole sort of concept of iteration, which you carry over not just from building products, where of course iterating on products is how you build good products. But then you carry that over into your management style, into your team, how you build your team, how you construct your organization, how you construct your operating model, how you construct your company culture, your work culture. All of that is just a constant iteration. And of course, iteration is only successful if you're moving at speed. So you just sort of adjust gears. You learn very different things in those two very different environments.
But yeah, as you mentioned just now when you were speaking, you actually helped establish Kareem Pay. So how did that even come about?
Yeah.
What was the experience? And then if you were going to give advice to startups that were maybe looking at integrating this, or big companies looking at integrating this as part of their models, what would you say?
Yeah. No, building Kareem Pay was one of the most fun and exciting things I've done. I have to
Really?
say it was just such an incredible experience. When Kareem decided, and just to give you a quick background, Kareem was a ride-hailing company for sort of about a decade before we were fully acquired by Uber. And we sort of developed a super app vision where we said there is a need in the Middle East, North Africa, Pakistan region for a super app, similar to what we've seen in Southeast Asia and China and India, etc. That we do think that for various reasons, which I can get into when we have more time, that it makes sense to have such a product in this region or such an app in this region. And we were very clear that the purpose of the Kareem super app was to simplify everyday life. So we were very clear that, for example, we're not a social network, we're not a messaging app, we are not a content app. We are providing everyday services to simplify your everyday life, sort of real world services.
Yeah.
So alongside ride hailing, we launched food delivery, groceries delivery, a number of home services. When you open the app in Dubai today, there are more than a dozen services. And as part of that, we felt payments are such a core piece of everyday life. Whether you want to send money to each other, send money abroad if you live in the UAE, 90% of us are expats. You want to pay your bills. There are sort of some everyday fintech use cases that we need to have on the Kareem Super App if it really is going to simplify your everyday life. And so we decided that we need to establish a fintech business as well. So we launched a few products over the last couple of years. In the UAE, we have a digital wallet. We have a peer-to-peer money transfer service where I can send money to you using just your phone number or your, as a contact in my phone book without knowing your IBAN and all of this. We can easily send money abroad. As you know, 90% of UAE residents are expats. So sending money to India, to Pakistan, to the UK, we've super simplified the experience. We also make it super easy to pay your bills, whether it's your due at the Salat, Salik, road toll, whatever. It's just a much, much easier experience than you have on other platforms. And then we have a few other services as well. We pay our captains into the Kareem Pay wallet. We have a express checkout product for third-party e-commerce merchants. And so it was just building all of those from scratch was super interesting. interesting and exciting. And one of the reasons it was is because, of course, it was about building the actual product, the product experience, the technical aspects, but also a lot of it was lining up the bank partnerships, the partnerships with regulated players, working with the central bank on our own licensing. Figuring out sort of the business strategy in terms of how do you brand and market this portfolio of fintech services. It was such a cross-functional experience, and of course building the team. And one of the really exciting things about building that team was that some of them have gone on to launch their own startups already, which is so exciting. Actually, one of them has a booth here. Another one was presenting at a panel. They're sort of in their seed stages, raising seed funding, trying to get their first clients, and so that is just so satisfying to see that.
Of course, the little ones are growing up. So Madiha, tell us, companies have to embrace tech, right? Because so many are, and there's so much benefits to it that it can really accelerate growth. And they will fall behind if they don't. There's no choice.
Correct.
But tech can sometimes go too far as well. So where do we find the balance between tech and human interaction?
No, and look, this is a question that is increasingly being asked given sort of the emergence of generative AI into all of our lives. This was always a question. I think it's just sort of come to the surface even more so now that we have this incredible technology that still has a long way to go, but we can sort of anticipate where it might go and how much it might transform things. Look, I think the use of tech is no longer an option, as you said. It's a necessity for a few different reasons. One, if you're not going to embrace tech, your business model, your ability to generate margins, etc., is just going to fall behind those that are using technology to improve their operations, to reduce their cost base, etc., etc. So that's one thing. The other thing is customers have gotten accustomed to a certain level of convenience and delight that comes from technology-based experiences, right? And so that's just table stakes. Now, where I think the human factor comes into play is judgment, is sort of taste, whether you can call it aesthetic taste, design taste. You can have tech tools that can do a lot of the heavy lifting for you, but at the end of the day, that differentiation that one product might have versus another, that brand that one company might have versus another, sort of that is based on a lot of sort of, I think, instincts that we've developed over time about what human beings value. And I think human beings have developed those instincts, and those instincts will be valuable. I don't want to say always, because we don't know, nothing might be forever, but for at least the foreseeable future and a long time to come, those instincts will still add a lot of value in terms of sort of rounding out the customer experience. So while tech can get you very far along, and that's how we competed with sort of established players when we were building sort of tech businesses at Kareem, which is the company that I've been with for a while, there is that human element when it comes to sort of really raising the bar on experience, really raising the bar on design, bringing a brand to life, even bringing customer service to life. One of the things that, we've heard some tech company CEOs talk about how using AI for customer service has reduced their costs by sort of 80%. There will always be instances where you need a human being to empathize with another human being. So I think that will remain.
And that's the thing, right? So like, for example, you said even just basic tech, like setting automatic rules on Microsoft when on your Outlook, where it automatically files things, or when you speak to one of these bots or whatever it is, there is still like, yes, it can cover a lot of things, but you are still going to find those instances where it's not, where it either makes a mistake or it's not applicable or something like this, right? So I'm saying embrace it, but at the same time, there's still like, it can never cover the whole human element. Maybe in the future as it grows.
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't think we should base this on the quality of the models and the interactions with AI that we see today. I think there's a lot of room for improvement, and they will continue to improve, and the pace of improvement is really what's actually more exciting than the products we have access to today. So I do think that they will sort of automate and improve a lot more of what we do today than we even anticipate. But I do think that there is a basic human empathy and a human connection, and that I don't know if we'll be able to recreate in a machine.
Not yet. So how have you found, because I've had the privilege of interviewing quite a few women, or speaking to quite a few women on these podcasts, but how have you found being a woman in this industry? Because I think we both agree there's not enough.
No, there aren't enough, and it's good to see more, but not enough. And what's so interesting is actually I have found this a bit more challenging now, later in my career than I did earlier in my career. I think when I was at more junior levels, I didn't actually feel that any real constraints. But as you progress through your career, personally, I felt those constraints a bit more in terms of sensing glass ceilings, sensing certain areas where I felt like, there were opportunities that maybe I could have done more to capture, or maybe others could have facilitated more. But I think that it's not easy. It's not easy, and I do think that you have to sort of course, be really great at what you do and put 110% into what you do. Exactly. But then I also think you need to, and I think women almost have to work harder, unfortunately, at positioning themselves. And sort of, asking for the right things and sort of demonstrating their worth. So yeah, I think it is something we do still have to work harder at than men do.
And the thing is, like, it's so ironic because tech it doesn't have to, it's remote, right? It doesn't have to be an in-person thing. And yet so many people can be learning about it from home, taking courses, doing it remotely. Yeah. Like, I cannot tell you, so I know a few women that code. And when you hear it, it's exciting, right? Because it's so unusual. But I think, what would you say to encourage more women to actually start getting into this space? Because it is remote. Yeah. Like, anyone can start it or get into it, start getting into it.
Look, I definitely think you can start remote, quote unquote. Yeah. There's a lot you can do to educate yourself remotely, online, especially with new technologies. The word on the street used to be that you should learn to code. I think we should now rethink how important it is to learn to code, or at least what aspects of coding. A lot of that might be done by Gen AI or other forms of AI in the future. And so really identifying where are you going to add value as an engineer or as a technical person or as a product person. I think we need to rethink that a little bit. And so women should keep that in mind as they figure out what they want to spend time educating themselves on. But that the remote will only take you so far.
Yes, true.
And this goes back to actually an earlier question you asked about the human interaction. I do think at the end of the day, if we're going to talk about career progression, and actually even if we talk about impact, that interaction with the team and that sort of managing upwards, managing downwards, all of that happens in person. And so we have to learn how to operate around human dynamics, team dynamics, managing upward, managing downward, inspiring people, being present in the workplace, operating in the workplace. I think this is a critical skill, and I actually think it's going to become more critical. So I think just assuming that it's going to be a more even playing field because it will be a remote is not a bankable strategy.
But so here's the thing, right? So tech can be used for so much, right? It's endless. The possibilities are endless. Yeah. But the most simple thing that a business can do is put tech into the administrative roles or whatever that is, right? So why, if that's the case, or assuming, why would you not go back to a traditional, why would it be so difficult for you to go back to traditional finance? Like, why do you specifically want to stay in tech?
And I think we need to be careful about, so there are quote unquote traditional financial services companies.
Very few these days.
Actually quite progressive. Yeah, but some of them are quite progressive, right? So I would say my alma mater, actually JP Morgan, the effort that they've put into either acquiring in, investing in, or building fintech is super impressive.
Sure.
And those are some of the people that I, again, had the good fortune of working with earlier that are now sort of really taking, especially the payments business of that bank in a very progressive direction. So there are, I think it's not so much which companies are digitally focused or not, but sort of within some of these companies, are there pockets where tech is really being embraced truly, rather than just being sort of in name only. Yeah. So I don't think I would exclude those. I think it's about finding the companies where pockets of that culture exists and where those teams are actually empowered to have an impact.
So you want to build another thing for another company?
Yeah, I think building has been such fun.
Yes.
And I think after having spent a bunch of time in strategy, it was great to actually build things. Yes. But one of the things that I find attractive more about the potentially about moving to the investing side of things is having the opportunity to think about multiple business models, multiple strategies, multiple companies.
Agreed.
When you're building, you're sort of in the weeds and really into the details and really into sort of your day-to-day operations, which has its own which is fun in its own way. But then sometimes you want the chance to sort of take a step back and think a bit more intellectually about business model, strategies, companies, and it seems like sort of venture investing or incubating ventures could be a great place to do that as well.
Well, I certainly look forward to the next thing that you build.
I'm
expecting big things, big things. Thank you, Madiha. It was lovely.
Thank you
to
so
speak
much.
to
Lovely
you.
to have chatted.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.